That ought to be enough. We can get the show on the road. Thank you all for coming. Oh, here comes Tyler Hicks. Let's turn him on there. Thanks for coming. This is the first time we've ever done this virtual. We actually used to do these live and in person. In Oregon, we did them at Next Adventure. So we usually had a bunch of anglers show up at Next Adventure in the evening when they were closing. Actually, we'd do it while they were still open so people could shop a little bit. And then we'd close the doors and do our meetings. And we'd have captain's bags for everybody with swag and gear and stuff. And I look forward to being able to do that again. I'm hoping maybe next year we can do that, pick a location, probably do 3 locations, maybe 4 locations for you Washington guys that are so spread out. And Idaho, if we can get North Idaho involved, we'd have to do 2 locations for them too, but it'd be kind of neat to get everybody together and see their faces. Let's see if there's anybody new here who hasn't fished with us. There's a few new names I see. If you haven't signed up for a membership yet, you can do that at the website, kayakfishingnorthwest.com. Click on the Join tab, and you'll find there where you can become a member. We've got a few different event types, that we operate. The first one I'll talk about is our opens. And I was just talking about membership, but for our opens, you don't need a membership. You can just sign up for an open and attend and participate, or get online and participate if it's an online open. With opens, we've got both types. We've got live events and we've got online events. Right now, the only live opens we have scheduled are our 3 season kickoffs. So in each state, we've got a season kickoff at the beginning of April. And the way that one works is it's sort of a pro-am deal where the newer anglers show up and the veteran anglers show up, and they get randomly paired together. So 1 new angler and 1 pro angler, we'll call them, more veteran angler. And they fish as a team that day. It's just a 2 fish limit for each angler, but your scores are combined. So that encourages people to really work as a team and try and help. The idea is that the veteran gets the rookie on some fish. But the last one we did, and we didn't do them last year because of COVID, but 2 years ago we did it in Oregon, and one of our newbies was the winner. He came in, Cody Allison, who's here, came in and caught the fish. I think Kegan caught 1, but Cody had a couple, and they ended up winning. And Cody had a really good season with us that year as well, and he's fished with us ever since. So that's what we're looking for on the opens. We're trying to create relationships and get, there's somebody else trying to get in, trying to get people acquainted with other anglers and learn a little bit about tournament fishing in an environment that's not very high pressure. It's pretty low pressure, focus on fun. It's only $25 to enter. So that's a good way to get started if you haven't done this before. The other types of events that we do are our tour events. So those are the main live events that we do. There's AOY points for those. So it's important to show up for as many of those as you can if you're interested in competing for Angler of the Year by the end of the year. Those are live events. They're a little longer, and those do have a little more pressure to them than the opens. So it's good to have some practice beforehand. We've got 5 of those in each state, 5 tour events in each state, roughly every month, although it's not exactly that way. Scheduling made it a little difficult for us to do 1 per month. And then we've got our online challenges. Those are also AOY events. There's a separate AOY for tour events and for online events. And for the online challenges, we've got 8 of those. So there is 1 of those per month. Some of them are a month long. Some of them are pick your day. So we'll give you 5 days to choose from, and you pick a day, and that's the day you fish. But you're fishing head to head against everybody else within that 5-day window. It's a really great way for people who can't get out very often to fish. If they can't get out 2 or 3 days a week, they feel like they can't compete sometimes in a monthly. So this is a great way for those people who can only get out every so often. It's also great for those people who work weekends and can never get out to do a tour event on a Saturday. So our online challenges this year have themes. And this is something we always did in Oregon. And we did 2 years ago, we did in Idaho, and we're going back to it. So we've got a theme for each month. Like the one in March coming up is pond hopper. So you can only fish lakes or ponds that are 200 acres or smaller. And the idea behind these themes is we're trying to see who's the most well-rounded angler, who can go to different waters and fish different species and, you know, month after month catch fish and see who can be angler of the year in that regard. Should be a lot of fun. It's always been really popular down here in Oregon. So I'm looking forward to getting everybody else kind of up to speed with them, especially our team event. That's always a really popular event here in Oregon. That's a 2-person teams. You pair up and you fish as a team. Your AOI points count for your individual scores as an angler, but the team is who's going after the money. The money goes to the team. I feel like I'm talking an awful lot. I've got to breathe. Okay, so let's see. Payouts. If you didn't see what's going on with payouts, we've lined up sponsors to help us with our payouts this year. We've lined up already $500 bonuses that we're going to put towards payouts for our tour events. And we're working on getting that up to 1,000. I think we'll almost certainly get it up to 1,000 for some of our tour events. I don't know if we'll succeed in getting it up to 1,000 for all 15 of our tour events, but we're going to try. So that's pretty cool because then we can pay out first, second, and third place, no matter how many people show up. And when we get a bunch of anglers, 31 or 51 anglers, we add a 4th and a 5th place that gets paid out as well. 4th and 5th place, you basically make your entry fee back, but you know, that's cool. You get to fish for free. So let's talk about AOI a little bit with tour events and online challenges. We've got 5 tour events. Well, AOI is calculated on your 4 best tour events. So that means basically you could skip 1 tour event if you wanted to, and you still would have a shot at AOI. Of course, if you fish all 5, then we take your worst tour event away. So that gives you a little bit of padding. If you want to compete for Angler of the Year, it's ultra important to fish at least 4 of those and preferably all 5 of those. And then with the online challenges, same thing. We've got 8 of those, and you've got to fish 7 online challenges to really have a shot at Angler of the Year. And I would say on those online challenges, one of the online challenges, we have that one per month, but then the other one is our season long. So we've got one that goes all the way from the beginning of March to the end of September. And that's, we're calling that the season long 50-50 because it's 10 fish, 5 largemouth, 5 smallmouth, your best 5 of each of those species total together, and that's your score. So even if your 6th largemouth is bigger than your best smallmouth, it's going to get culled, and your 5 smallmouth are going to be in that score. So it's important to score well in both species. You can't have 5 great largemouth and 5 dink smallmouth. You're probably not going to win if you do that. And that's, again, going back to that trying to challenge our anglers to catch different fish and do different things. But on that season long, don't leave that out when you're thinking about AOI, and especially when you're thinking about the Kayak Back Classic. That's our championship that we do in October. And one of the ways you can qualify for that is to win the season long challenge. If you win the season long, you're automatically in. If you win any one tour event, you're automatically in. If you're AOI for either one, online or tour events, you're in. And if you're runner-up AOI for online or tour events, you're in. So there's a bunch of ways you can qualify for the Classic. We had 17 anglers qualify for the last one at 10 Mile. Quite a few of those guys are here who fished it. It's a lot of fun. That's an invitational, so you have to qualify, but you don't have to pay any kind of entry fee to go and fish it. You just go and fish for free. You got to pay your travel. It's going to be at CJ Strike Reservoir this year in Idaho in October. Let's see, talked about that. All right, let's talk about identifiers and bump boards for the new folks that are here and haven't done this before. Our identifiers are available on the website. Here's what they look like. And that's how you fill it out. In TourneyX, a code will be generated the night before the tournament starts. You'll be able to get the code. And for our tour events, it'll be an image code. So it'll look just like this identifier. And it'll be the same for everybody. Everybody will have the same code. So they'll show up at the event. And if they don't have it yet, we can give it to them very easily and they can write it into their identifier and use it. For the online challenges, it's an auto-generated code that TourneyX does. So every angler has a unique, different code than everybody else. That makes it a little bit easier for us for judging. In both cases, it makes it easier for us. And TourneyX has improved that software a little bit. It used to confuse people a little bit because it showed both of them. So we'd have some anglers that would use the uniform code and some anglers that would use the unique code. But I think that, I don't know if he's released that yet, but he's been working on it. And I think it'll be released by the time we get going with tour events. So that problem should go away. Make sure when you fill this out, it's legible. Use a Sharpie or some other type of marker. Don't use a ballpoint pen. Do not use a pencil. You have to use this identifier. You can't use the KBF identifier anymore. We're not accepting that. So it's got to be on this one. And it's got to be this size. You've got to print it the same size. Josh Duggar's trying to get in.
Is there a reason you guys stopped using the KBF one?
What's that?
Was there a reason why you guys stopped using the other one?
There's a couple of reasons. One, the size of it bugs me. It doesn't fit in the tourney tag or any of the other things that we use. But two, we're sort of moving out on our own a little bit. We are still a KBF partner, but we're going to go over the rules here in a minute. And our rules are a little different than KBF's now. We're kind of coming up with our own identity. And the big reason, though, is our sponsors. If you use the KBF identifier, our sponsors don't get represented on those identifiers. And that's one of the things when we're selling sponsorships that we tell them they're going to get. We tell them your logo is going to be on every photo of every fish that our anglers upload. So that's kind of important for us to have our own for that regard. We always encouraged our own, even when we allowed the KBF one, but now we're putting our foot down about it. You can't write your code on a blank piece of paper. You can't write it on the back of your hand. We had somebody last year who actually drew our identifier in pen, drew the whole thing, logos, everything, and wrote the codes in. I'm like, dude, I congratulate you on your artistic talent, but that's not going to fly. I had to deny his fish, unfortunately, but you know, it was good. We get a good chuckle out of it. So yeah, you got to stick to that rule. And if we're going to go into rules later, but when you get into the rules, read really carefully about the things that'll get a fish denied, because there are certain things you just can't do. So bump boards, a lot of you, we've sold a bunch of bump boards. Here's the Catch Carbonate. This is mine. You can see what we usually recommend you do is put a sticker right here. And if you remember, put a black line like that. It helps us in judging the fish to know if the lips are touching that fence. Both of those help with that. This board does not float unless you like lay it on the water, then it'll float because it'll capture air back here. But you know, you can put some foam back here, or you can use like that spray foam and fill in these gaps, and then it will float. Or you can get a tether for it from RoboHawk or anybody else. And then this is the new Catch X board. So this one's aluminum. It weighs quite a bit more than the plastic one, but it's lighter than the old catch board. And it doesn't have the separate fins here. It's all kind of built in. It's one piece. It's actually almost exactly like the carbonate, except it's aluminum. So those are both great options. We're going to be phasing out the hog trough and the fish stick. If you've still got that, if that's all you have right now, we'll accept it. We're not going to deny fish because of it this year, but we're going to encourage you throughout the year to get transitioned away from the hog trough and the fish stick. Some people have asked why. Well, besides the fact that the hog trough breaks really easily, the biggest reason is you've got to color in the lines on those. And people are really inconsistent about how they color in the lines. Some folks we've seen will color in on both sides of the tick mark. So their tick mark ends up being, an 1/8 of an inch thick. That's not cool. When we check a board in the morning before an event, we're probably going to tell you your board isn't going to work if you bring a board like that. So that's the big reason we really wanted to switch. They're just a lot more durable and they're a lot more accurate. And of course, the aluminum boards were always accurate. They just sink like an anchor. You got to be sure and tether those.
Hey, I have a couple fish sticks. Can I bring them as a backup?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tournaments? Okay.
Absolutely. You can bring your fish stick or your hog trough as a backup. And I recommend that if you bought the new catch carbonate and you want to use the hog trough, throw it in your hull or something. That's great. We are going to do board checks before tour events this year at the check-in. So if you are going to have a backup board like that, just be sure and bring them both to have your TD look at them. And all 3 TDs are here. I'm sorry, I should have said something about that. So I run Oregon. I'm Marvin. Jim Davis is running Washington, and he's here. And Chris was here. Is he still here? Yeah, there he is. Chris Bordas is running Idaho. So if you've got specific questions about your division or something in your division, be sure to reach out to your TD. You can always reach out to me too, but I'll probably pull in that TD from your state if it's appropriate. But they're the ones who are going to be checking those boards in the mornings. Okay, rules. I don't want to go too deep into the rules. I'm sure some of you have questions. I'm going to give you an overview of just a few of the rules, especially things that are a little different than maybe what you're used to, or maybe different than what we've done in the past. What we did this year is we took the rules, we started with KBF's rules because that's what we used to use. We really used theirs and only had a few exceptions posted for things that we did differently. So we started there, but then I looked at a lot of other clubs rules. I looked at Hobie BOS. They've got a really nice set of rules, but they're very different than KBF's in some cases. So I looked at Hobie BOS and there were things they had that I liked and that we pulled in. And then Jim and Chris and I, and then also our assistant TDs, some of which are here too. They all chimed in on what we thought on some of those rules until we got it nailed down to the way we thought it made the most sense. And then there were other clubs that I looked at, other clubs in other parts of the countries that I looked at their rules and looked for anything in their rules that I thought made sense for us. Okay, so some of the rules that are important that we talk about. The mandatory check-in is important. Last year, because of COVID, we didn't do mandatory check-ins. At least we didn't in, were you doing them in Washington? Jim, were you doing mandatory check-ins?
Yeah, we had mandatory check-ins.
Okay.
You guys just all stood apart from each other.
Okay. We did not do mandatory check-ins, and we did not do mandatory weigh-ins in Idaho and Oregon either. We allowed people to fish and then go home. I didn't want to force somebody into a gathering if they didn't want to be there. And we still gave them all their prizes, and they were still in the drawing. We had to ship a whole lot of gear to people, which was expensive, but this year we're gonna go back to the way we used to do it. So we're gonna have a mandatory check-in, and those times will be listed in the tournament event page. But you'll have to show up there. You'll have to show your board, and you'll have to just fill out a little bit of paperwork as far as what time and like what vehicle you have and what kayak you have. So we know that that's the main purpose of check-in is we know you're there. And if something happens and you don't show up later, we know what to go looking for. We know your license plate, we know your vehicle, we know your kayak. That's the main reason we do the check-ins. And then the weigh-in is also going to be mandatory. So after you fish, we've got a time that we can launch, and then a little later, we've got a time that we can put our lines in and actually fish. And then we fish for 8 hours. And then it's lines out. We can't fish anymore. And then you've got about a half an hour to an hour, depending on the waterway. It really depends. Some waterways have cell service, so it's no big deal. Others don't, and some of them are a long drive to cell service. So for those, we're going to stretch out that time between lines out and between your photo upload deadline, the time that you have to get to go find cell service and upload. And that's one of the other differences is we used to have this system where that was based on KBF, where you were supposed to upload your photos by a certain time, but if you didn't upload them by a certain time, the rules said you just had to kind of be in line by that time. And that didn't work very well. It was a little bit messy. So we're kind of taking a hard line on that. And this year, you're going to have to go and find service and upload it. And sometimes that might mean, depending on who your carrier is, you might need to leave early. You might need to get off the water before lines out and drive somewhere to find service and get your photos uploaded on time. If you don't get your photos uploaded on time, you're going to be out of luck. We're not going to count them. Let me jump in
This
here.
is something,
Jeremy's,
this is something that I had to do every single tournament nearly last year in Washington. I know Idaho's are even worse, but every tournament I came off the water almost an hour early to go get service because I didn't have service in a lot of places. So the way I see it is if I can do it, so can everybody else. It wasn't too bad, really. It was pretty, I went and got service, got uploaded and boogied back so that I could have my photos uploaded because it was in Washington in particular. We had a mess. It was a mess. So we're going to try to avoid that this year.
Yeah, there were a couple anglers that it was a problem up there. And
yeah, it wasn't good.
And we were close to having issues with it in Oregon at one of our events where it was really tough. And we almost never have service at any of our lakes in Oregon. They're always kind of remote. I think we've got one this year that'll have good service. Dan down there in Astoria, our first event down there, that'll have really good service. That won't be a problem. But most of our others, you're not going to have good service. And the people who have like Sprint or T-Mobile, I'm hoping theirs is improving. I think that's who Jim just went to, and I'm hoping theirs is improving. Verizon is one of the better ones. AT&T is one of the better ones. But some of the other carriers, you may have a tough time getting service. The other thing you can do is partner up with somebody that has good service and has a Wi-Fi hotspot that they can turn on their phone, and you can upload it through their service. I sometimes will have a Wi-Fi hotspot when I go, so I'll let people upload through my service if I have that available. So yeah, ask the other anglers. Everybody's always willing to help if they can. So I highly recommend that. It looks like Jeremy has a question. He's got his hand up. He's doing it. Congrats on doing it the right way, using the digital hand up.
Well, I didn't want to have to interrupt. So I know Idaho is doing stuff a little differently this year with all the COVID rules and everything. They're not approving permits until the month of. And I know, like, I've seen all the IKBF stuff on there.
Yeah.
But are we going to adjust start times in Idaho if bass boat clubs are launching at that, on the same day, on the same bodies of water?
I only know of one so far that's definitely the case. CJ Strike, when we're doing our classic, the 2-day event, there is a bass boat tournament on that Saturday, the first day of the classic.
Cascade. I think Cascade had, because there's some tournaments, because I've been paying attention to all the different boards too. I think there was one on Cascade. And that's a memorial tournament they run every year. I'm not sure if it's that weekend or the following, but I think there's one that's going that weekend too.
I mean,
and they always launch out of the city boat ramp.
Okay. The good news on both of those lakes is they're big. So that helps us a little bit. And in both of those cases, it's an open launch. Once you go to the check-in
Okay.
and you have your
Yeah.
board checked, then you've got like, depending on what time you show up for check-in, you've got about 30 minutes that you can drive to whatever launch you want to do. So we will pay attention to that. You're right. IKBF, IDFG is holding the permit applications. I've talked to them. They've gotten back to me. They said, we got them. We had to go do a little back and forth. I had to make some change. We made some changes in Idaho with the WCC stuff, the West Coast Championship. So I had to go back and forth and update some of our applications, but that's all been taken care of. And they're great there. They're just super people, been super nice about it. But yeah, they haven't cashed our check yet for the permits in Idaho. They're just holding the check and they're holding the permit. So I don't really know what conflicts we may run into yet. We'll just have to see and keep our fingers crossed. But yeah, we'll
And then-
adjust. Whatever we have to do, we'll do it.
And then Swan Falls, do you have a backup for it?
Swan Falls, we don't have a good backup. That's an open. So, worst case, if the weather's terrible or something, or the current is just ripping at Swan Falls, depending on the way the weather's going, if we have to, we'll cancel it or we'll postpone it. We'll do it again. Maybe if we could do it a little later, then we could probably do it like at Lake Lowell or something, which might be a little more conducive to the environment of the open anyway. So, but it's not open yet when we're doing it. So next year we'll plan a little better for Idaho and we'll kind of shift you a little bit later with our schedule. That was our fault for not planning that in really well at the beginning. And the schedule is so complicated that making a small change, what seems like a small change to one of the divisions, cascades throughout the entire schedule. And it's really tough to make changes with 15 tour events. It's challenging. Okay, so we talked about check-in and weigh-in. You've got to show up for both of those. If you don't show up for them, you're going to be disqualified. And if you show up late, you're going to be disqualified. If you show up a little bit late for the weigh-in, like let's say you're 1 minute late for the weigh-in, you're going to get disqualified from the event. Your fish are not going to count in Tourney X, but you can hang out and still participate in the gear drawing. If you were there on time and you just show up a little bit late, you can still do gear drawing. You'll still win gear, but you're not going to be in the running for your fish, unfortunately.
Poor Gage had to live that last year.
Unfortunately, he did. Is Gage here?
Yeah, I don't know if he's
Yes,
here or not.
yes. Sorry.
He
Sorry to
30
remind you, Gage.
seconds. 30 seconds he had to live that. I felt bad for the poor guy, but
We all did. It's tough.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got that. Cell Wi-Fi, we covered that. All right, so here are some of the rules that are a little bit different. All right, this is kind of a big one. During competition, every competitor must have all required Coast Guard safety equipment. This includes a vest type personal flotation device, or PFD, a safety whistle or horn, and a 360-degree overhead light, which must be on in low light conditions, and a high visibility flag flown on the kayak. The light and the flag are only required on waters that allow motorized watercraft. So the pond hopper, for example, that's our first online challenge of March. Under 200 acres, you're not going to find a lot of motorboats on 200-acre ponds. In fact, most of them don't even have a ramp. So if motorboats aren't allowed on there, you don't really need to worry about the flag and the light. But if motorboats are allowed on there, and this is in the online challenges or in the tour events, you need a 360-degree light and a flag. Somebody asked me today, is a headlamp okay? And I'm like, well, that's not really a 360-degree light. That's a 60-degree light. So you
Coast
really
Guard
need a light that's
regulations-
on a pole, like the Yak-Attack Visicarbon Pro is a good one, or any of the Visicarbons. The Railblaza is a really nice one. Burley Pro makes a really nice overhead pole light that's super bright. It'll light up your whole kayak. but you'll need one of those, and you'll need a flag attached to that or attached somewhere to your kayak. Yak Attack makes a cheap little flag that's like $35 too. So if you've already got your light taken care of, you can just do some other sort of flag. What were you going to say,
Would an
Jim?
ATV bug you with?
Yeah,
A what?
Brandon here. That must be Brandon.
No, it's Jeremy.
Oh, it's
Would an
Jeremy.
ATV
Yeah, Brandon
bug you
Henning
with?
has one of those.
Would that work?
Yeah,
The light
Brandon
up
Henning
ones
up in
would,
Washington
yeah.
has one. It's
The-
sweet.
The requirement from the
Okay.
Coast Guard for anything that doesn't have a motor, including like a sailboat or one of us or flat bottom, is one 360-degree all white light. That's right out of the rules of the road. I used to enforce that. So that's
Yeah.
technically what we're supposed to have, is one
It's gotta be
360-degree
visible.
all white light. Yep, it has to be visible 360 degrees. And you can technically use a flashlight with the cap on it and hold it up. I don't recommend that. Get it, if you put it on a flag, it's just way easier and they're not that much more. But yeah, we do need those. Those are important. I've had the sheriff roll by me, and the only reason he saw 4 of us out there on the Columbia was because we had flags. It's exactly what he told me. The only reason I saw you is because of the flag that's this long like that, says
Yeah.
Hobie on mine. And so I was like, oh, so
But yeah, I
But
mean, if you're
they're
a
important.
DIY person and you want to do it yourself, get a flashlight like Jim's talking about, one that's got a globe on the end of it, a piece of PVC, and attach that to it and stick that in a rod holder or something. There you go. You've got a 360-degree light. Then, if you don't want to spend the money on one of these more expensive ones, you can do it yourself as long as it's 360 and fairly, somewhat bright where people are going to be able to see you.
hey, you go super
Two
cheap like
two
Tyler
nautical
just said.
miles as well.
What's that?
Oh, two nautical miles is what it has to be visible for as well.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So
Yeah, somebody, and I didn't realize you said, Jim, it has to be white, and somebody asked me that too,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize that, so I'll have to correct
It's
myself
in
on
the
that.
rules of the road. It's one 360-degree all white light.
Okay, great.
That's the standard for sailboats. Any boat that's not under motor power, they're supposed to have that. And then the sheriff, I know in Washington State especially, well, in all of them, on a navigational waterways, they will check you for it. So
Got it.
Yeah, if you want to go super cheap, you can just tape or glue a ping pong ball to the end of a little flashlight and tape it to a pole. It gets the
I like
job
it.
yeah,
done.
you could have an old broken fishing pole, tape it to the end of that, put
Yep.
a flag on it, and there you go, presto, you've got a flag. I mean, and I'm gonna try to have some extras because I forgot mine last year. Marvin loaned me one, so I'm gonna try to have some extras so I can loan to my anglers if they're out and they don't have it when I do checks. Then I can
Sure.
give them a flag to use for the day. So
That's
So I
great.
guess my question would be on the, like, you mentioned pond hopper, right? And this is something obviously that you would like us for us to do. Who's gonna watch us do pond hopper? And
Well,
have a flag and a light?
The
I'm
the
just-
online challenges, that's a bigger question. The online challenges obviously are a little trickier for us to judge if people are staying within the rules. But I would say, especially in pond hopper,
David,
there's a good chance somebody else that's fishing in that online challenge may show up. And if another angler sees you there and you don't have your flag, they might say something to us. And then we're going to come to you and say, hey, did you have a flag? So, I mean, it is a little bit more on the honor system with the online challenge. It's we can't be there watching you. But, we still, one, legally, we have to tell you to do the right thing. If you choose not to do it, if you sign paperwork saying, I'm going to do the right thing, and you tell us I'm going to do the right thing, and then you don't do the right thing and you get hurt, one, it's a liability thing. We've got to cover our butts. But two, we really expect everybody out there to do the right thing. At least we hope so. Okay, so the other thing with flags is I am working on some tournament flags. So a flag that will say tournament on it. It'll probably have our logo and say tournament on it. And we'll hand those out at check-in and everybody can attach that to their flagpole or to their kayak somewhere. Those are really handy just to let other people know, other people that are fishing on the water know that you're actually participating in a tournament. Sometimes it prevents you from having to tell them. You know, sometimes the bass boat guys be like, I'm fishing a tournament, man. You're like, so am I. You know, so it saves you having to say that sometimes. So that's a biggie, is
Quick
those
question,
safety
Marvin.
requirements. Yeah, Chris.
So with the flags and the flashlight, are we supposed to have them on our kayaks at all times, or is that just mainly for the low light and
I
then
mean,
that's it? Or if we're going out
with
at all
online,
times, have them?
like with online challenge, if you're going out in the middle of the day and you're going on a piece of water that doesn't have motorboats, that motorboats aren't allowed, no, you don't have to on your kayak. You don't have to bring it at all in that case. But if you're fishing a tour event, our launches are almost always in low light situation. And we generally, lines in is generally a few minutes before sunrise, anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes before sunrise. So that's always going to be a low light, and you need to have your light on when you launch at a tour event. The onlines is not a big deal. Obviously, if you launch with it, you're going to have it on the kayak. The flag, I think it ought to be up there all the time, unless you're on a pond.
I just look at it as if there's boats, you got to have a flag.
Right.
There's motorboats, flag is
Right.
mandatory. It's going to be and for my state, they are mandatory. The light, you can turn it on and off after it becomes daylight. You don't have to have it on the whole time, but you've got to have a flag. If
That's
there are
right.
motor powered boats around, you
That's
must
right.
have a
And
flag.
batteries die, and you know, stuff happens.
Yes.
And
Yep.
we're not going to be super hard liners about this. Like, you show up and don't have exactly the right thing, we're not going to DQ you and kick you out of there, you know, at that moment. But we're going to talk to you about it. We're going to tell you this is what we expect you to do, and we're going to try and encourage you to do that the next time, at least. If you can't get it fixed that day, at least by the next time you come out, we hope you'll have that resolved.
Thank you.
Okay, let's talk about mouth open. So the guys who have fished a lot
Marvin.
of our events will know from KBF, we used to follow their guideline, which was
Marvin, before you move on, Tyler
Yeah.
had something to say.
Oh, I'm
Tyler had a
sorry.
question
Go,
just before you
Tyler.
move on. It's okay. Go ahead, Tyler.
I guess I just make sure we say that PFDs are mandatory. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I
Absolutely.
did, yes, and but it's worthy of repeating, and it's worthy of repeating that it's got to be a vest type.
Yes,
can-
that's what I was going to hit on. Vest
Yeah,
type is
it can be an inflatable. We toyed with the idea of not allowing inflatables, but we felt like that was too harsh, so we backed off on that. We definitely I like solid PFDs better, but some folks have a hard time with the solid PFDs for whatever reason. They might have back issues or something, and it's just uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable for them to be on the water. So they can use the inflatable, but it's got to be a vest type. You can't use the belt type.
Jordan.
Was Jordan one of those?
Oh no,
Or
he's
is he an
sending me
inflatable
messages.
guy?
He's telling me to get this piss water off from in front of the mic. That David's hounding me.
Okay, so that's the safety stuff. So let's talk about mouth open. So KBF's rule was if the mouth is open a 1/4 inch, they take an inch off the length of your fish. What we've had happen as a result of that is people have gotten used to that, and they've gamed the system a little bit. So they'll put the fish down, they'll close the mouth, and the tail will be just shy of 16 inches, let's say. It's 15 7/8. And so they'll back off that fish a little and let the mouth open up just a little to like 1/8 of an inch or 3/16 of an inch, which technically is legal, to get that tail to barely touch. Well, that's not in the spirit of the rules. We've got a bit of an issue with that. And we have deducted scores from anglers who have done that. And whenever I've deducted, I'll talk to them about it. I'm like, hey, look, you're kind of rigging the system a little bit. So we we demand that the mouth is shut. Now, of course, these fish aren't all exactly the same. And so what's shut on one fish isn't shut on another. So that there is a judgment call there. But if we look at that and we see a crack in the mouth, or we see the mouth is open, we're going to take 1/2 inch off of the length. So we're being more strict about how tight the mouth is closed, but we're penalizing you less. This is in line with what Hobie BOS does. We're actually doing the same exact rules Hobie BOS does and a couple of other clubs that I looked at. In fact, Hobie BOS takes it a step further and says if the mouth is wide open, they're going to add 1 to 2 inches or take away 1 to 2 inches from the fish. We're not doing that. But if you have a mouth that's wide open, then the judges and or the TD are going to talk to you and say, hey, look, we require that the mouth is closed. You've got to close the mouth on your fish. And if you were to continue to do that, if you were to continue to upload fish with wide open mouth, then the TD is going to potentially deny your fish. They might disqualify you from the event even if you're just blatantly disregarding that closed mouth rule. So we take that one pretty seriously. There's no other way for us to be sure we're judging everybody on an even playing field than to make sure the mouth is closed. Now, like I was saying, not all fish are the same. So some of them you close it and it's tight, you know, it's like this. Another fish, you close it and it's like this, right? That's still a closed mouth. We're going to look at that. We're going to say, no, the jaws are closed. So their lips are curved and the lips aren't closed. That's not a problem. It's down into the jaws of the fish. If the jaws of the fish are closed, we're good. Now, the bad news is if you catch a fish that's got a mangled mouth from somebody who was a little too overzealous on their hook set, unfortunately, you're going to lose that ½ an inch on that fish. There's just no way around it. If you can't close the mouth because the fish's mouth is messed up, we're going to take a ½ an inch off. That's the breaks. But we're going to do that consistently to everybody. So everybody has that same chance of catching that mangled fish. That's great. Okay, let's talk about your hands, because that's something that pops up. Is Jed here? Oh, Jed's here. Okay. You got to be careful where you put your hands on these fish, okay? You put the fish on the board. In fact, here we go. I got my fish back here. Here we go. So here's the fish, right? You can't put your hand under his gill plate. That's an absolute no-no. That will get you denied for that fish, absolutely. You can't put your hand over his eye. That's an absolute denial. I mean, if you're right on the edge of the eye, we might let it slide. But if you're covering a quarter or a third of the eye, we're going to deny it. You can't have your hand on its mouth or hiding its mouth. That's a denial. On the tail, a little hard to tell on the stuffed bass, but if you're touching the fin, there's this part which is called the what do they call that? The not the carbuncle, but I can't remember what that's called, but the fleshy part, you can touch that. But if you're touching the fin, we're going to take, I think it says we're going to take an inch off, if I'm not mistaken, on that. If you're touching the fin, the tail fin of the fish. Some people worry about how the fin lays. We don't worry about that. If it's pinched like this, that's okay. If it's a natural lay, that's okay. It doesn't really matter. What's important is that at least one of the lobes of the tail, there we go, has to be on the board. So if you're like this, that's going to be a denial. It's got to also be flat on the board. If it's like this, that's going to be a denial. If your hand, like I said, if it's under there, that's no good. If your hand is over the gill plate, laying on the gill plate, that's okay. And that's been a discrepancy with Washington. The rules were a little different in Washington about that, the way that things were judged. But that is the rule. You can put your hand over that gill plate as long as it's not under it and it's not over the eye. Now, the only exception to that, I would say, is if you catch an 8-inch fish, which is our minimum for most of our tour events or all of our tour events, and you've got some massive mitts. There's a couple guys in here who've got some big meaty mitts, and you put your hand on that 8-inch fish, and there's like, all I see is your hand and an eye and a mouth and a little tail. If you only catch one like that, we'll probably let it slide. But if you catch 2 fish within a minute or 2 of each other that are the same length and your hands covering the whole fish like that, Well, we can't tell if that's the same fish or a different fish. So we're going to deny at least one of those two fish. So if you're catching a little tiny fish like that, put 1 or 2 fingers on it so we can actually see the coloring on the fish. We can see the markings on it and tell if it's a duplicate entry or not. Guys, sorry, guys with big hands. I have small
Tyler.
hands. Tyler's
Another
got
thing
massive
too.
mitts.
No, Tyler's telling me all I catch is 8-inch fish.
Oh,
You know, use if you can get away with when you have a hand on the gill. I like to put my pinky on the gill. That way I don't cover the markings. You know, I'll hold it down with a smallmouth.
smallmouth
They lock their
especially,
mouth
yeah.
open and their gills flared up. You can't get them to close their mouth without pushing down on their gill plate to get them stuffed up against that board.
That's
So
right.
you got to almost put your hand on top of it, on top of the gill plate, but try to cover the fish with as least amount of hand as you can. I mean, you know, 8-inch fish, like you said, you could probably hold down with 2 fingers, you know, so.
Yeah, they're a little easier to keep down anyway. It's those fish that are in the 14 to 18 size range that are, you know, smallmouth especially, they love to flop. So I get it. If you want to put the death grip on that fish to hold it there, do it. But just make sure we can see the fish.
And we do need to see markings because we had, like last year, we had two different times we had identical fish uploaded an hour apart.
That's right.
And
it's happened to me.
One of those doesn't count. So
yeah,
we got to be able to see that stuff.
Especially in the online challenges, right? Like the ones that are a month long. I mean, if you're fishing the same body of water, you might come back a week later, 2 weeks later and catch the same fish. Well, we're going to deny the second time you caught that fish. We're checking for that. And in the season long, that gets a lot trickier. Just identifying the same fish that you caught in March and then caught again in September is kind of tricky to do, but we're trying and we're always looking for duplicate fish in that way. So the more markings we can see, the better.
This does happen. Last year I was fishing a pond and hooked a fish, broke me off. And 1.5 months later, I caught the same fish. It still had my hook stuck in its mouth.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Was it like starting to rust or was it still?
Yeah, it was super rusted out, but it was my hook because I'm the only one running those owner wire hooks like that. So.
Yeah. Okay, another difference this year, we used to follow KBF's thing on this, but we're not doing it this year, is all fishing must be conducted from inside the kayak unless otherwise stated by tournament officials. So again, here we're kind of following Hobie BOS's lead versus KBF's lead. KBF will allow you to wade. They've got this rule that if you're within sight of your kayak, if you can see your kayak, but you're wading, you're allowed to fish. Well, that could be like 300 yards away or more. And I can technically see it. It's way over there, but you know, my kayak's kind of bright colored, so I can see it. I don't know, that always rubbed me the wrong way. So we're doing it like Hobie BOS. We're going to say, you got to fish from the kayak. The only exception is if we fish a body of water that wading is an important part of fishing there, or you kind of almost have to. And that usually would be a shallow river. So like Hobie BOS did that on the Susquehanna River last year, and they're doing it again this year. And I fished that river, and it's shallow and it's rocky. It's really rocky. So it's pretty hard to fish floating the whole time in that river, especially in some of the places that are going to hold smallmouth. And there's some tank smallmouth in that river. So if there's a body of water that it makes sense for us to allow people to wade, we'll put that in the rules for that tournament. And of course, there's always the potential for special rules for a tournament, and they're going to be listed on the tournament detail page and or on TourneyX, the detail page on TourneyX if there are special rules. So that's a big change. Online challenge locations. So that's something I would encourage everybody to read the rules really carefully about what you can do there. You got to be on public waters, and you got to launch from a public launch. Like you can't launch on a private launch and then fish public waters. That's not acceptable. And certainly vice versa is not acceptable. You can't paddle into waters that are not allowed. Let's see.
I have a quick question on the waiting thing. I know it's not fishing while you're waiting, but there's a body of water we have a tournament on this year that, depending on the route that you take within the river, there can be shallow spots that you can get caught up in your kayak, but the current's moving kind of fast in other areas. It's easier to wade across that shallow flat. Sometimes you can paddle it, sometimes it's tough. What's the ruling on that?
I had that on my notes to talk about tonight, and I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it up. So I'm glad you asked, because now I will. Is we do have a no portaging rule. So
Yep.
according to the rules, technically, you would not be allowed to do that. You would not be allowed to get out of the kayak and drag the kayak across really shallow water and get it there. You basically have to be able to get there from inside the kayak. Now, if you have a pedal drive, of course, the smart thing to do is pop your pedal drive up and paddle in there, and hopefully you've got a fairly shallow draft on the kayak and you can make it. But that would be the way to do it. Now, I'll say, if there's a body of water that it makes sense and it's important for us to revisit a special rule for that body of water, talk to the TD in your state, and the three of us, the three TDs, will talk about it. And if we want to make an exception for that body of water because it makes sense, we'll do it. I mean, we're reasonable about that stuff.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I definitely get the no portaging rule, things like that. But I mean, the water's moving pretty quick around the one bend. I mean, if you got a motor, you can get around it.
I see what you're saying.
Pedal drive, it can be tougher, and so that's why I asked that. I mean, it's possible to get around it. Sometimes that water's moving too fast. But
Marvin, let me jump in on this one. Let me jump in on this one.
Sure,
Jeremy,
Chris.
you're fine. I know where you're talking about, and some of us know what you're talking about. That's not going to be an issue in terms of it just won't be an issue. The time of year we should be okay. If it comes to that, a matter of quote unquote safety, if it's safer for us to have to get out and drag the boat, then we will adjust the rule accordingly for that location.
Absolutely.
So all anglers have a fair shot at the same areas.
And that's something I would ask everybody here too. If you show up and you're pre-fishing somewhere, and you see anything that you think is worth bringing up to the tournament director to let them know. If you see a hazard, let's say, especially fishing a river, and you see a strainer, a tree has fallen. But even on lakes, you see something that's a hazardous situation, or even something that you're not sure about the rules, absolutely talk to us about it. And that's partly what's great about the check-in, is if there's something that's changed like that, even if we don't find out about it till Friday night, at the check-in, we'll let everybody know. We'll say, hey, look, we've changed the rule.
So I know it's kind of stretching, but there's also, I mean, there's like, so in like BASS tournaments, some of the guys will carry a chainsaw if something's fallen in front. Is that legal?
No.
Okay.
No, and that is spelled out in the rules. I don't know if chainsaw specifically is spelled out, but you cannot change the environment. You can't move a tree. If you can't paddle around the tree, you can't move the tree.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can check that and make sure that we're clear about that in the rules.
Marvin, did you see where somebody just wrote in there, does launch mean launch? So I think we should clarify public ground,
Take that, Jim.
Some of the places that don't, so a public launch means public property. You can't snake through somebody's grass to launch your boat, and you can't launch at a private launch, but you can launch at a boat launch, even if it's a state park and you have to pay, because everybody can. And if you have to drag your bushes or your kayak through the bushes and it's public property, not private property, then you can launch your kayak there.
Yeah, even if it's like private land, let's say it's a marina or something, and they have a launch there that anyone can use if they pay $5 or $10 or something, that's okay too. I mean, that's sort of the gray area. That is technically private land, but they're allowing the public to use it as long as they pay a small fee.
Yeah.
But
The
I'll
trick
tell you
to
what,
the
it's
launch
not.
is
It's not if you like rent an Airbnb that has a dock
right.
out back and you say, well, all I did was paid for the launch. No, because anybody can't do that.
Right. Everybody has to be able to use it.
I think we have a body of water in Idaho that's got a launch that it's a state park, but they only sell so many launch passes per year.
Per year.
What's per year? They only sell so many like passes to get into that area. Is there rules on that?
Yeah, let us know. Let Chris know about that outside of here privately, and we'll address that. We'll look at that launch and we'll find out what the rules are, and we'll come up with a ruling for that one. Because that, I mean, I guess
but it could be unfair.
Yeah, it could. I mean, and if it's a yearly pass, that's weird, because even if they had, let's say we had 20 anglers and they had 20 slots free, it's weird for us to buy 20, slots or however many to launch there and lock it out for everybody else for the year. That's kind of strange. But yeah, that's one of those weird things we just would have to address.
Yeah, I mean, there's a public launch down from it, but it's that much more an advantage. But yeah, I've seen, I think, because you have to buy them by a certain time, but they only sell so many by that certain time, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So you said there's a public launch down from it?
Yeah, it's probably 200 yards, 300 yards away from it.
Okay.
But it's a
So
state
then
park.
why wouldn't
That's break-ins,
if one's
vehicle
public?
break-ins.
Oh, yeah, because I mean, on that one, if it was me, I'd actually look at considering off limiting the one and opening, everybody launches from the other.
Yeah,
I get
if
the
it's that
break-in. We got
close.
that around here too.
If it's that close.
Yeah.
I mean, we made an exception at the Classic last year too, down at 10 Mile, because the main launch that most of us used is public. And then right next to it is the resort. And there's like a little beach and a launch over there. And it's like, I mean, it's literally like 50 yards away, maybe.
It was.
So I said, if somebody's staying at the resort and they want to launch there, that's fine. Because there's no competitive advantage to them launching, 50 yards away, 30 yards away, whatever it was.
I think Miles was the only one to use it. All the rest of us drove
there
over.
weren't many that did. So the other thing I saw with that launch question was, does launch mean boat launch? No. You can launch from what we call on the event detail page is, we'll try and spell out, or at least I do in Oregon, and we need to expand that a little bit more with Washington and Idaho, because I didn't know some of the details. But I will always say I'll try and list all the main launches, and I'll say whether it's an improved launch, meaning a paved launch, the trailer and boat could go down, or an unimproved launch. So it's a dirt ramp basically. But it also, as long as you can access the water in an area that is public, you're not trespassing on private property, and you just want to launch on the bank somewhere, I've done it. And that can be a huge advantage in some of these bigger bodies of water, especially if you can drive somewhere else and park legally and drag your kayak down to the edge of the water and put it in the water and launch right there. I mean, that might save you 30, 45 minutes of pedaling or paddling or motoring in the morning to get there. So yeah, I would encourage you to Google Maps is your friend. So that's everything I've got on my list. I'm going to open it up now to, well, first let me open it up to Jim and Chris and see if they have anything they want to add, and then we'll open it up to questions.
I think covered it pretty well. If somebody's
Okay.
got a question or anything, they can hit me up, private message me or whatever, or email me, or my phone number's on the deal from Washington. You guys can give me a call. It doesn't matter. But I think we covered it pretty well. For me, my thing is, make sure everybody watches their identifiers, uses the right one, and make sure their fish is measured properly, and watch your glare and shadows.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Especially on the bump board on the mouth, because if I can't see it or I have to guess, then we're probably gonna deduct or deny. So we want a good clear pictures.
Yeah, we've had to deny fish simply because of glare, because there's glare on especially if it's in a glossy identifier cover or something, and the sun hits it, and we just can't read it. And if we can't read, even if the code's there, and even if they submitted 5 fish and 4 of them, we can read the code. 1 we can't. We've got to deny that fish. There's just no, that's the rule. We have to do it.
You may be able to read the code when you're looking down from the phone, and then you snap your picture. I've had this happen to me, and you look at the fish on your picture and go, I can see everything, it's perfect, and then move on without checking your identifier, because you kind of see it in there. But then when you upload it on there, we can't read it.
Yeah.
We can't see it because of glare. It's like we can't read it. So
I really want to do a video to show this, because if people did this, it would help so much. If you've got an iPhone or an Android, especially, when you're taking your fish photos and you line your camera up over it, what I always do is I take my finger and I touch the identifier on the screen of my phone. And what that does is it tells the camera in the phone to adjust the levels of the photo to make the identifier the focal point. And so if your identifier is blown out from sun and you do that and you touch it, it will tone down the photo, and all of a sudden the identifier then is totally clear. And then I take the photo. It only lasts a few seconds after you tap it like that. But if you always tap your identifier on your phone right before you hit the trigger, it won't happen to you. You will not have that problem. I won't promise you, but I will.
The onlines were really rough last year with the glare, and identifiers cut in half.
Yeah, that's not cool.
Get your identifier in the picture. Make sure the whole identifier is in the picture. You can't put it on the fish. You got to have it, to the side there.
Thanks for bringing that up. I forgot to bring that up. You can't put the identifier on the fish, and you can't put the identifier on your hand and then put your hand on the fish. Some clubs allow that. We don't.
So, but just make sure real close on that, because there was in Washington, there was a lot of things like that went on, and it caused a lot of little stirrings, I guess you could call them. So especially with the online stuff, we just want to make sure our pictures are good and clear. As much as Tyler's poking at me, all of the pictures in the past that I've judged of Tyler's, his are always completely clear. Everything's legible. And his fish are always crystal clear pictures. I could see the whole thing. I could see the tail. I could see his marks are nice. I can look at his picture, see that it hits the line, and I can make an easy call on that, where I get other pictures and they'll be in there. And I got to zoom in on the computer so tight, and I still can't see the line that they're calling that fish mark made the mark to. When it gets like that, we're probably going to have, me, Marvin, and Chris get together and just deduct on those fish or deny those things. Because it becomes, when you're judging a ton of photos, it becomes really hard when you're starting to guess. Well, the guy says it's 18 inches. I think that's an 18, but I really can't tell because nothing's darkened in and the glare, and it's just, so we want to take care of that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the 3 phones that I've tested on these have been the Pixels, Galaxies, and iPhones, and all of them allow you to go back and select. You can actually go back, and it takes like hundreds of different photos, and you can select the right one that gets the sharpest zoom, best elimination of glare. So if you can afford to pick the right phone for this, those are the 3
it's
that
just
are the
time.
best.
Yeah,
you just have to take the time to do it. That's why I always use a net, so I can throw the fish over the side, go back and check my fish, make sure the photo is good. The fish is in the water. It's got water over the gills. I'm not stressing about it. And then I can release my fish and feel good.
I've had to take like 4 different pictures because I couldn't get the right one with the fin. I had the fish in the net for 4 or 5 minutes trying to get a good picture and turn my kayak in a circle to get the sun off the glare, and everything else. So that's stuff we want to look for. So anyways, that's all I got.
Question in the chat down here on the Pick Your Day challenge, is there going to be a set launch time? I need to check the rules and make sure that I have that in there, because what our rule was always about that, and it's not just the Pick Your Day, it's all the online challenges, is we ask anglers to not start fishing an hour before sunrise, more than an hour before sunrise, and more than an hour after sunset. Just for safety reasons, we'd prefer you fish when there's light or the light's not far away. But I'll check the rules and make sure that I've got that in there. With the new rules, that might have slipped through the cracks. So I'll make sure. And it's not, I mean, it's not a real hard, fast rule, but it is our recommendation.
So as far as the rules go for me and everything, all I can say is I would encourage everybody to reread the rules top to bottom, spend the 20, 30 minutes, whatever it takes you to read it. I don't know, I think something like 20 pages, 25 pages. It is pretty long, but read them again. There are subtle changes. Just make sure you know them, just so it doesn't put us in an awkward position. And it's your responsibility to know the rules. So spend a little time reading them, just so we don't get put in a tough position that you're not going to like the outcome. As Marvin said, ask questions. If you ask me a question I don't know, I promise you I'm going to ask Jim and Marvin. Pretty much everything that comes in goes to them as well. So
that's the way we operate. I mean, anytime there's something that any of us are not 100% sure on, that it's documented in the rules, we ask each other. I mean, we are a committee with the three of us. And then even if the three of us can't come to an agreement about it always, we've got our assistant TDs that we'll pull in and we'll get their opinion too. If I feel like I need more opinions, because we can't just decide on something, we'll pull all those people in and help them decide, which is awesome. Another question in the chat, does the season long count towards AOI? Yes. This is the biggest mistake a lot of people make, is they'll like not fish the season long thinking that it isn't going to make any difference in their AOI, and it kills them, because that's an important part of the equation. Not only that, but that event by itself is a classic qualifier. Gage is here. That's how he qualified last year for the classic, is he won the season long. He wasn't able to fish as many live events last year. He's got a new baby and stuff. So he really focused on the online, and he won that season long. He wasn't our AOI because he couldn't fish enough events to get the AOI, but he did fish that season long and he won it. So, but it does count towards your AOI. It's just like another event in the AOI. That's 7 of 8. The 8th one is the season
on
long.
the online. Yeah, on the online.
Yeah, that's all onlines I was talking about. Yeah.
Do both of them count for, kayak fishing Northwest and then individual clubs?
We do all the AOI is by individual club. There is no AOI for KFNW. The only thing we do that is regional is the classic. So we've got our AOIs and our winners of different events in each division, and then they all come together for the classic and fish together.
Well, there's one you can sign up for all 3 clubs for a year long, right?
Yes, but that's an open.
Okay.
So there's no AOI points on that event. Yeah, that's the season long regional. That's the $75 one. And that one's got a great payout because there is no AOI fees that are deducted from it. There's no classic fees that are deducted from it. It's really just the PayPal administration stuff and Tourney X. That's all we take out of it. So the payout, Joe won that. Joe's here. He won that last year and got a chunk of change for that one. Okay. Is the team online challenge a draw event? No, it is not. You pick your teammate for the online challenge team event. And like I said, the teams are who win the money, but you're still fishing on your own as far as your AOI points. So it doesn't matter very much in terms of AOI, but it does in terms of making money and the glory of it. We had last year, I think we had 30 anglers in our team event. So 15 teams, and every day somebody else would take a lead and then another team would take a lead. And it was crazy.
I'm going to tell Tyler that Isidro's already promised to be my partner, Tyler. Tough luck, buddy.
You're out.
Jed had a question. He wants to know, is there a minimum distance requirement between anglers during a live event?
We don't have anything in the rules about that. And I looked at some of the rules about that and I seriously thought about it. Maybe that's something we could do as a poll or something just to see how the general population feels. I don't know. It has never been a big problem for us in Oregon. I can't speak for Washington and Idaho because I've only fished a couple of events in both of those states. But it's never been a big problem here. But some of them do say like 100 yards. You got to stay 100 yards away from people.
For me here in Washington, I don't think a distance requirement is like a good idea. There's an ethics thing, but I mean, I'll put we fished the classic last year at 10 Mile, and half the day, me and Kyle were on the way back. Me and him were right next to each other fishing. So, I mean, we were doing it, and we were talking and fishing. Literally, we were kind of on our way back. I don't need somebody from across the lake going, "Hey, I saw those guys fishing by each other. They were within 100 feet of one another, and we were literally being friends and talking and and fishing here and there, whatever." So, I mean, there's an ethics thing. If somebody gets a little close, you can ask them, "Hey, can you give me a little bit of space here?" If you're camped on a spot because there's fish there, then by all means, somebody should respect that and wait till you either leave or just move on and go do their own thing. But I don't think necessarily making it a rule it just adds a lot of extra. Angling perception goes a long ways when you're at the other end of the lake and thinking you see two guys together. I mean, it's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
Most people ask when you roll up on somebody like, "Hey, do you mind if I fish here?" Or do you mind if I,
do. And that's what you should do.
Jeremy and I have done that, and I don't think it hurts anything.
No,
and whoever was there first kind of should have the right to it. The first right to it.
Yeah.
Is my opinion. Like, it's a respect thing. We do have rules about respect and treating other anglers with respect. And if you come in and fish over top of somebody, that's not respectful. That can get you disqualified from an event. That can get you suspended. If it's bad enough, that can get you banned. So I don't know. I hesitate to legislate that in rules necessarily when I think it's more of a common sense and respect thing.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Is there an off limits period for the classic and like an official practice period?
Oh, thanks for bringing that up, because that's something I didn't talk about, and not just for the classic, but in general. In general, pre-fishing for tour events is cut off the Friday a week before at 4 p.m.
Sweet.
So if the tour event's on a Saturday, a week before that, I'm sorry, not a week before that, the day before that. I'm sorry. I see people looking at me like, what is he talking about? The day before that. The reason I'm confused is because we've got one of our events in Oregon, the first event that we're doing in Oregon. It's two small lakes that we're fishing that don't have a ton of fish in them. There's some good quality fish, but there's not a lot of fish. So if we have a bunch of people show up there and pre-fish the heck out of that on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, come Saturday, it's going to be burned and we're not going to be able to catch any fish. And that's something I would ask of everybody here. And we're going to get into that over the next few months and share some more information about, the right way to pre-fish. But, again, be respectful to everybody and be respectful to yourself. Because if you go and burn a lake and catch a huge bunch of fish, limits for 3 days before Saturday, well, guess what's going to happen on Saturday? You're not going to catch many fish. So yeah, our normal cutoff is the Friday before the event at 4 p.m. So the fish have got all night to recover if they were caught. But that one that we're doing, our first event in Oregon, we did push it a week before. It's a whole week before the event. We've got it cut off because we felt like those fish couldn't handle it. Those waterways couldn't handle it. William, you've got a question.
Yeah, for like events like that. So I live down in Roseburg. It's 5 hours for me. I'm not going to drive up a week before to pre-fish it.
Sure.
If I go up on Thursday night, on Friday, would I be allowed to go graph the lake?
You can until 4 p.m. Oh, you mean on that Culdy Sunset event?
Not fish it, just
graph. I hear you. I don't know. We're going to have to talk about that, and I'll get back to you. This is all being recorded, so I'll find out and give you an answer to that.
William, and just to part of that, if you get Google Earth Pro on some of these lakes and ponds, I'm probably saying a little too much here. You can actually scroll back into time and you can look at where that body of water was quite a while ago and see all the stuff you're kind of wanting to.
He's talking about
looking at.
mapping
That's
depth, though. He's talking about taking his
Talking about
hummingbird
mapping.
or something.
Yeah, but
out there.
it'll give you a start as far as structure, and maybe there's an old fallen down, I don't know, bridge or something. That's how I did 10 Mile. That's how the only way I
Yeah,
could figure 10 Mile, because
a lot of the small lakes in Oregon, there are
There's
no
nothing.
maps to
Yeah.
at all.
I would agree with William. It's tough here. There, you know, if you've got Navionics or anything, there's just nothing on it.
Hey, there's an elephant in the room about the kayak giveaway. I'm still trying to hear anything about that. What's going on there, Marvin? You got anything on that? Sorry,
What?
I had to.
We're supposed to give away kayaks?
Oh, that's what I heard on Facebook.
Who said that? We've got 6 kayaks.
6 of them
that we're going to be giving away this year. 6 kayaks, guys. Yeah. So I think, I don't know exactly what they're going to be, but I think we're going to have 3 Sportsman PDLs, Old Town Sportsman PDLs. That's most likely what those are going to be. And then we're going to have 3 Feel Free or maybe 3 Waters kayaks. I'm not sure exactly what those will be. The Feel Free 3 Waters, those are coming from, that's coming courtesy of Headwaters Kayak, Dan Arbuckle. And there's a shop right here in my town that's one of his customers. So he's going to get those kayaks to me pretty soon, I hope. I'll probably have those in the next month. And we'll distribute those out. Jim will get one and Chris will get one. So we'll have one in each state that we're giving away on those. I don't know the models of those or what they're going to be, but you know, those will be a little bit more on the entry level side, I would say. Whereas the Sportsman PDL, I mean, that's top of the line pedal kayak right there. You know, nice big stable kayak. We haven't announced exactly how we're going to give them away. We talked about how we were going to give them away early, but that was before the Old Town deal had happened. So
stepped up.
We're kind of revisiting that and going to look at it. But I'll say we are going to encourage people to participate in multiple events. So if you're fishing 4 out of 5 tour events, you've got a much better shot of winning something, let's say. But we'll announce the exact details as we get a little further into it. The other thing I'd like to do, and this is kind of unofficial so far, but so, you know, I'll say it, but it might change. It probably won't, but it might. Those Feel Free or 3 Waters kayaks, again, are a little more entry level. So I kind of like to focus on the anglers with less experience somehow, weight it a little bit more for them so that they've got a shot of winning those. I don't know how that will work or how we'll do it, but if there's some way that we can give a little more incentive for those anglers, I think that'd be super because they're going to appreciate it. It's always tricky giving away kayaks because we all have kayaks if we're fishing in this, and some of us have pro staff deals. So, you know.
Well, what if one of the new guys is already running a fully decked out Hobie?
That's what I mean.
Hey man, my new motto is if you can't beat them, join them. I want a PDL.
Who's that guy? I want to know who that guy is.
Exactly. I mean, and some might be like, you know, I like this better than what I have. If they've got a really nice kayak, they might like it better, and they might decide to keep it. So it's a little bit tricky giving away kayaks, and I've talked to both Old Town and Headwaters about this issue. We do have a rule in there that you cannot sell any prize that you have won on any of our social media channels. You can't go onto Facebook the day after the event and post that kayak for sale, or you will be banned from KFNW. So don't make that mistake.
Say that again,
put
Marvin?
it on Craigslist. You know, if you definitely want to sell it,
selling them. Yeah, don't be
put it on
doing
Craigslist,
that.
put it on eBay, whatever you want to do to sell it, but don't put it on our channels because that's not a good look for our sponsors to see that after they've given it to us.
We've been super fortunate. There's been a lot of really hard work put into our sponsors this year because we're really trying to make it better for all of you guys. So the number one thing to us that's near and dear is we want to take care of these people. We want to take care of these organizations, and we want to take care of the products that they give us. We don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize taking things away from you guys as anglers. So this is important. And it's just going to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. We have a lot of stuff that's out there still, the thing that could be coming this year that we're hoping for. And so we want, once one company sees we do good, it'll just keep growing. So we don't want to do anything crazy that jeopardizes that at all.
Absolutely.
Our sponsors are number one important.
Totally. We look out for our sponsors very carefully. And that's something some of you probably saw pop up with this Blue Fox tin tag, the identifier tag that he prints on aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
We were a little worried about that when we saw it. We're like, that's for our sponsors, the front of the ID. But I talked to the guy. He's a super nice guy. And I gave him some advice of what I thought would be better for him. I said, when you put a URL on there, a website address, I said, that's sort of like direct marketing. I said, in my opinion, and that, that's something I do in my work, is I'm a brand strategist. I said, I think you'd be better off having your logo on there, because then that's more institutional brand awareness. You're just creating awareness for your brand. And he said, you know what, you're right. And so he changed it. He's actually changed it for everybody's. If they've already got it, he's not going to change it. But if you look on his website now, the ones he's shipping, it's got the little logo down at the bottom in small type now. So we are accepting those. We've got a 15% discount. Oh, that's something I forgot to mention. Anybody here who does not have the password for the members only, you should have gotten it in your confirmation email. There's snail mail out with welcome letters and stickers in them. It'll be in there if you got that, the password. But if you don't have the password, you can't find
snail mail.
If you can't find it in any of those places, just message me and I'll get you that password. Very nice. Everybody's getting a sticker for KFNW and a sticker for your home division. I'm reading the chat messages in here, and they're just cracking me up. There's some great stuff in there. There's some gold.
Oh.
Was there, did I miss it? If for the championship, was there the rules on the pre-fishing, or is it the same as the season? Because I know you talked about the season long.
For the Classic or for the West Coast Championship?
For the Classic, sorry.
For the Classic, it should be our standard. Well, I don't know. We didn't do anything different with it last year. So I suspect with CJ, it's a big lake. That's the thing. 10 Mile is a big lake, and it was able to handle 17 anglers was not a problem for that lake. And not even letting them pre-fish it hard, it really wasn't an issue. And CJ, it's probably not an issue either. So I would say we probably won't change it for CJ, but that's something we'll figure out as we get closer to that event, and we'll make sure that it's spelled out in the details for that event. That's always spelled out in the schedule for every event, is when pre-fishing ends. And it's almost always that 4 p.m. the day before, but we reserve the right to change that if the waterway or the conditions, it could be weird conditions, something happens, I don't know, that we decide
What
to
about
change
the
it.
qualifier then? Is there different rules on that one?
Nope.
Okay.
Qualifiers, the West Coast Championship qualifiers are regular tour events in every way. The money's the same. Everything's exactly the same. The only difference is if you're in the top 25% in the standings for that, then you have qualified for the West Coast Championship down at Clear Lake in August for the West Coast Championship. But that's really the only difference in that event. Now, because of that, we think those events are going to have a little higher numbers than we usually do for our tour events. And I think probably the ones a little later in the season, even more so, because the other way you can qualify is by fishing 3 qualifiers. If you sign up and you show up and you fish 3 qualifiers, it doesn't matter. You could skunk all 3 of them. You are qualified if you do all 3. But of course, we had to get tricky with it, and we've only got 2 in each state. So that means you got to travel a little bit. You've got to go somewhere. And I spelled all that out in a Facebook post and I need to put that in, I'll get that into an email as well for those people who are not on Facebook. I'll get all those details into an email too, because there's some strategy to it. Like the Idaho guys have it pretty good because they can fish their two. Theirs two are really early in the season, so they can fish their two. And if they didn't get in the top 25%, then they can make a decision. And there's two places they could go. They could either go to Loon Lake or they could go down to Billy Chinook in Oregon. And Billy Chinook's a lot like Idaho waters. It's very similar to Idaho waters. So I think you feel at home down there in Oregon here. And every state has a little strategy with how you can do that, figure out if you need to do that third one. For Oregon, Black Lake is before any of ours. So I'm going to go up to Washington and fish Black Lake. And I'm going to fish both of ours in Oregon. So boom, I'm going to qualify. I'm probably not going to fish it because James Snyder and I are going to be, and Mark Chrisman and I are going to be running the event. So I'm not sure I'll have a chance to actually fish it, but that's how I'll qualify. And some of the other Oregon people will probably do the same thing. Any other questions on the West Coast Championship?
Did you read Tyler's comment that he put in there?
I'm making my way down. Why is Idaho so complicated? I can't answer that, Tyler.
No. Down further than that, it would be the last one. He wanted you to give a shout out to all the sponsors.
Oh, that's a great idea.
We still do have some work. We're still working on some, so some could still be coming in. Some
there's definitely
to be coming in.
Definitely still sponsors I'm working on. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely stuff still brewing, but.
Well, let's save that for the very end. Does anybody have any other questions?
I got a question, Marvin. I was reading over the rules and it said that the military bases are off limits.
Yeah, unfortunately so.
So does that mean that part of American Lake is going to be off limits?
I don't remember exactly. We dealt with American last year and had to look at it. And I don't think it's an issue with American. As I recall,
it's a shared lake.
It's on a base, yes, but it's not. But anybody can fish it and go there. And they do. The way it used to work is the military bases. A lot of the military bases, you could go and you could get a pass to go in there and fish. But last year, because of COVID, a lot of them stopped allowing that. And people who worked on the base or were active military could still get out there and fish, but the average person in the public couldn't. So because we didn't really have any good way of keeping track of all that, we just said, sorry, no military bases this year. And we basically said the same thing this year. But I think American, you're okay. You probably can't launch from certain launches on American that are on the base, but I think the water is all public.
Yeah, we're going to do American Lake will be a shotgun start for us during the live event anyways, which will be a public boat launch. So the launch won't matter. It's going to be at one specific spot. We won't let people take off on that one. So for the live event, it won't matter.
Great.
And then for the motor, go ahead.
My other question was, so
we can use the hand raise if we need to.
Your other question is?
So if I fish the season long and then fish a live event, can I use that same photo for both or no?
You sure can. In fact, we encourage that. I tried to actually pick our online challenges where they meshed with the tour events that were happening. That gets into like some depth on putting the schedule together. But I tried to do that when I could. Like if it was a month that was a smallmouth month and the tour event was an all largemouth lake, well, then that's terrible for the people that are fishing it. They can't double dip. They can't put those fish in either one. So we try and do that. And yes, you absolutely, that's on this identifier. You see how I've got 3 codes filled in there. Well, those are different events, and you can put up to 6 on here. So it's hard to imagine needing more than 6, but yeah, I guess you just have to get another card if you had to do that. And I've done it. I've filled it up when I'm doing a lot of events in a month. But yeah, that same photo, you don't need to take another photo. Just take the one photo, and as long as all the codes are showing up on it, you can upload it to as many of those as you want. And that reminds me of another thing I want to bring up that very few people take advantage of. And if you read the rules, it's right in there. You know what I'm going to say, Jim.
I do.
Man, we have this weird situation with these 3 states that very few people have. And because we're an organized group between all 3 states, we have this benefit that very few people have, is if you're fishing boundary waters, so the Columbia River, the Snake River, you can submit the same photo of the same fish in both states. You can upload the Snake River, you can upload it to, and it's not even just those. I mean, there's lots of, Oregon and Idaho have boundary waters only separating them in a number of places. Washington and Oregon do, and Washington and Idaho do. You can do any combination. I don't know of anywhere you can fish all 3. Is there a place you can fish all 3?
I don't think so.
But you can always submit in 2. And we had a couple of anglers who took advantage of that last year, but not very many. And you know, if you have a really good month and you're uploading it in both Washington and Oregon, you might win both online challenges with the same 5 fish.
Don Hogue dominated with 21-inch smallmouth for who knows how many months in a row.
He sure did. And
both Oregon and Washington.
And we're not giving anything away. He himself on Facebook in public said, you know, the Columbia is a magnificent piece of water. You know, he made it clear where he was catching those fish. So we're not spilling anybody's spots by doing that. But I mean, you kind of know if somebody uploads a bunch of smallmouth in the same smallmouth in Washington and Oregon, there's only so many places it could be.
Yeah.
With the motors, what's the delay time on launch?
The delay time is sort of a if we need to kind of thing. And it will only be if there's a shotgun start. It'll never happen when we do our open launches, because then the advantage is, you know, you want to go and find a spot to launch that's closer to where you want to fish, ideally anyway. So there's no reason to do it for that. So it's only if we do a shotgun start, and it'll only be a tour event. It won't be an open. Like the open is a shotgun start at Swan Falls, but there won't be any delay there because they're a team. They're going to launch together. And so this year, the rule doesn't mean anything. We're not going to do it at all because we don't have any shotgun starts in Idaho, or Washington or Oregon.
The Hagerman or Salmon Dam or whatever it is. There's one launch there unless you go way downriver. I don't know what the boundaries are going to be at.
Hagerman, Chris and I have got to get together on, and I've had a couple of anglers, and I apologize for being slow and getting back to you on that. I've had a couple of anglers ask me for the details on Hagerman, and we haven't put it out yet. So you may be right. There may be an issue with Hagerman where there is only one launch, and we'll have to consider that. But we left it open as far as how much that delay would be, because it really depends on the body of water. If it's
how are you going to make that fair if you don't know where everyone's spot is to get an exact average out? There's no way to make that fair.
Like this, because for example, we've got a lake in Oregon that I would do that with. We're not fishing it this year, but if we did, there really is only one launch. It's a huge lake, and there's basically no fish for about a mile from the launch. So if we're doing it there, we're probably going to make that delay a little bit longer than we would at a lake that, say, you can catch fish right off the launch. If you can catch fish right out of the launch, then we're probably not going to do any delay at all. There's no need to. The only reason we're going to need to do it is if there's like a mile plus that people are going to have to travel to find fish. And then we're going to make that judgment when we announce that tournament. We're going to make that judgment, and we're going to put that in the special rules of here's what the delay time is for the motor guys.
Hey, Marvin, poor Brandon has had his hand up for a while there.
I know. I saw it. So does Jeremy. Brandon, take it.
It wasn't important. I was just gonna say American Lakes, local lake for me. And that lake is public. It's not on the base. It just has the base that runs up to it.
That's what I thought. Thank you for confirming that.
Can you show us pictures of your kayak again, Brandon? With all the pretty lights
The
and
whip,
wiring.
it was somebody else
he's
that
got-
asked about the
he's
whip,
got
but
more than
Brandon's the one who
whip on that
has it.
thing. That thing's tricked out like it's some kind of fancy Porsche or something.
He showed up at one of our events down here and I launched behind him and I could see
I think he's
him.
got a 60-inch big screen on it.
It's only
it's getting on 11 o'clock here. Are we going to about done soon?
Oh yeah, you Idaho guys. I'm sorry. Yeah, we are just about done. Does anybody have any other questions?
I do.
Shoot, Jeremy.
The next question is, I know some guys run red and green lights on the front. I know we were talking about Coast Guard approved things. If your kayak is not powered, it cannot have those lights on. Otherwise, you're considered a vessel under power. Am I wrong on that?
Thank you for bringing that up.
It's called underway making way. And if you're not powered, you're not supposed to have those lights. That's why they require a 360-degree all white light. So
okay.
A lot of people do it. Yeah, a lot of people do it. And I always tell them, you really don't want to do that. I just saw the other day, I think Greg Blanchard video, he has it on his. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Yeah, I mean, just common sense. Like, I don't want a boat to see my red and green lights and think I can get out of the way fast like they can. So that's why we do a 360 light, is they know that we're not moving fast. You know, same thing with like a sailboat.
Well,
supposed to have a big.
Here's the way to look at that. You want to follow the Coast Guard rules as closely as you can, because let's just say, unfortunately, somebody gets hit by a power boat. If you're running the wrong light configuration, or you don't have a flag with a light on it, you're liable. If you're got your flag with your light and that guy runs into you, he's liable, because you, as a kayak angler, because you're the words are restricted in your ability to maneuver, you have the right of way in all waters. And the big boats don't realize that. But what it comes down to is covering your tail in the event of a tragedy. Something bad happens. So that's what it comes down to. You want to follow the rules, because in the end, it's what's going to, unfortunately pay your doctor bills, or whatever you want to call it. It's just, it covers your tail.
Yeah, I was asking that mainly for the newer anglers, because I know they look cool on the front, but it's not safe.
Yeah, you and I have talked about that, Jeremy, and I knew you were on the same page, but I appreciate you bringing that up so that everybody's aware of it.
So what about other colors on the boat? Can you put other colored lights on the boat?
Absolutely. And if you're fishing somewhere that's buggy, I mean, red lights are way less attractive to bugs. Especially, if you want to trick it out with LED lights. I mean, Brandon's is pretty tricked out. I made a comment when I pedaled past him. I'm like, could you put some more light on that, please? Because it's bright. But it's cool. It's really cool. I mean, you're not going to miss him. Nobody's going to crash into him in a powerboat too easily unless they're passed out.
I fish a lot at night. And go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I fish a lot at night, and I just use a ton of white light. My one on my flag, and then I have a couple of battery operated lanterns that I stick out there, and I light everything up on my kayak. So all I see is a big white blob. So
hard to miss you then.
Yeah.
One thing I see on my notes here, and talking about motors earlier, that I wanted to bring up and just make sure everybody has read the rules and understands our policy on motors. We do allow electric motors within the sizes that are specified on there. And, with your kayak, depending on what kind of kayak you're using, you're allowed to use them. Any of our opens, you're allowed to use them, no problem. You're allowed to use them in any of our online challenges, no problem. You can't use them in any of our tour events unless you have a documented disability, and you need to contact me if that's the case. If you've got a physical reason that you need a motor, then we're going to allow you to fish. Some don't. Hobie POS does not do it. They have a hard rule about it. I'm not sure how they do that really. And of course, some of the others allow motors for everybody. We've put that to a vote to all of our members, and about 2 to 1, our members said, no, we'd rather it be human powered. But at the same time, I don't want to tell those people that need a motor that they can't fish with us. Like that's the bottom line for me. I'm not cool with that. So they are allowed to fish in our tour events with a motor as long as they've gotten permission. And the people who have permission are listed in the members only page on our website. So if you see somebody with a motor and you're not sure if they're supposed to be using a motor or not, you can go on the website and look and see if their name is there and find out. And, you know, the last thing I would say on that is give those people some respect. You don't know what it's like to live their life and be them. So if they need that motor to get out there and compete and fish, then give them the respect that they deserve to do it. And I don't ever want to hear about somebody giving somebody else with a motor a hard time. That is looked down upon harshly by me, and it will be dealt with. We'll see. Who knows down the road, as these motors get cheaper and everything changes, maybe people will change their minds, or maybe we'll have 2 divisions, a motored and an unmotored or something. But for now, this is the way it is. It's not perfect, but it's sort of the best system that we could come up with. Any last questions? All right, then per Tyler's suggestion, I'm going to thank our sponsors. Our signature sponsor this year, Old Town, genuine watercraft since 1898, canoes and kayaks. Great company. Happy to have them on board. CenturyLink. If you need fiber, contact CenturyLink. They've contributed a bunch of cash to us this year, and that is one of the things that is paying you guys these bonuses when we do our tour events. Feel Free Kayaks. That's through Headwaters Kayak. NRS Fishing. They have been a sponsor of us since the beginning. They are a fantastic company to deal with, and our contact there fishes some of our events over in Idaho, and he's a heck of an angler. So David Foy, so look for him. Next Adventure, also a perennial sponsor. They've been a sponsor with OKBF. OKBF was started in 2016. So I should have made a bigger deal about that. I guess we're 5 years in here. This is our 5th year with OKBF, and a little less than that with Washington, and just this is our 3rd year with IKBF. But Next Adventure has been with us all along the way, and a great sponsor. Three Waters Kayaks, again through Dan at Headwater. Anchor Wizard, I hope that one's going to come through. They gave us some Anchor Wizards last year, and I think it's going to happen again. Boggs Footwear, we've got 4 gift certificates from Boggs Footwear for $400. So we'll have 1 in each division and 1 at the Classic. Dakota Lithium batteries. We have, I believe, 9 10-amp batteries from Dakota Lithium and 1 18-amp battery from Dakota Lithium. The 18-amper will go to the Classic. The others will be 3 in each division. Ego Fishing, I'm hoping. I'm still working with them, trying to make it happen. They were great last year, gave us a lot of gear. I'm hoping they'll come back with this year. I'm in talks with them. Fear No Bass, he's coming back with more hats and apparel stuff, which is great. Renegade Custom Fishing is doing a bunch of custom crankbaits for us. We'll have Renegade Custom Fishing and Fear No Bass will be at, I believe we'll have something for them at every single tour event that we do. And something special at the Classic from both of those. RoboHawk, they were with us last year, gave us a lot of great tethers, and I just ordered a couple things from them. I ordered a tether for my catchboard and sort of a tow tether for my kayak. I'm hoping that they come back with us again this year. Again, I'm talking to him and hoping that comes through. Shelta are definitely back. They've been with us for 3 years now. Fantastic hats. If you need a no-flop brim hat, that's the way to go. Suspends, I think, are going to be back with us again. I'm working on that one. Trice Custom Baits, Brian Trice over in Idaho. He makes some fantastic looking plastic baits. I have not fished with any of them yet myself, but they look really cool. And we're going to have a couple packages of his baits at every event, every tour event this year. Yak Attack, just formalities of that. They'll definitely be through. They've been a long time sponsor of us. I don't know exactly. Well, actually, I do know a little bit more about that. They've changed the way they're doing it, which is great because everybody here knows when you show up at an event, you might win something from Yak Attack that you already have. So they've kind of switched over to codes. They're giving us a bunch of codes. So you're going to get a code from Yak Attack, and you could stack up the codes. If you get 2 or 3 codes over the year, you could then use those to order something like a VisiCarbon Pro or something and maybe pay for the whole thing. And last but not least, ZR Custom Tackle, jigs, spinnerbaits, Kyle Zemke, Ned jigs. I swear by those EWG Ned jigs, and the little buggers are great. He's back with us again this year. He's fishing over in Bass more this year because he's trying to get sort of a national thing going. So he won't be fishing as much with us, but he is going to fish as many events as he can with us this year. But he is sponsoring us again. We should have a package of his baits at every tour event in all 3 states again. And then there's our supporters. I'd encourage you to go to the website and look at those. We've got discounts on the website from those people that aren't quite ready to sponsor us, but are ready to give us a discount on their gear. And I'm working on that for Catch too. A couple people have asked me if we have a discount on the Catch aluminum boards or the Catch holder. We don't currently, but I'm working on it, trying to get one. Any questions about sponsors? I think that's it, guys. Thanks for hanging around, especially for the last little diatribe bit. But it's going to be a great year. Really looking forward to fishing with most of you, if not all of you, and judging your fish. We'll be doing a lot of judging this year. It looks like the numbers are going to be high. Thanks again. This will be saved. I got a recording of this. I'll post it on YouTube, and then I'll share the links everywhere. So if you need to come back and revisit anything we talked about, it'll be here.
Thanks for all you guys do.
Thanks again. See you guys later.